In today's class, we will explore what egregores are and how, through egregores, the management of tens, hundreds, thousands, and even millions of people is carried out over a long period. Interestingly enough, the very word egregore itself, when I was searching for its true origin, I discovered not one, but two distinct locations. The word aggregate refers to the combination of heterogeneous or homogeneous parts into a whole. You know, an aggregate consists of several parts. And the French word aigré refers to an upright feather or a tuft of feathers that adorns a woman's headdress or hairstyle. We all know that egregores, generally speaking, the word comes from some occult teachings and some psychics use them and so on. But we will look at the egregore from the perspective of the concept of public safety. And here we will need all the arsenal we have already become acquainted with. That we have already become acquainted with, meaning again, what is necessary. Such key things that need to be kept in mind during the entire lecture when considering egregores. I will try to remind them, but overall these are the points. First, this is what the foundation is: the concept of public safety, the trinity of matter, information, and measure. This is the first understanding. That is, the transmission of information is always a process of management. It is necessary to know the basic provisions, quite general theories of management that we have all reviewed. The goal vector, the vector of the current state, feedback, process stability, complete management functions. All of this is needed when considering egregores. Otherwise, it will be some abstraction. And of course, the processes occurring in supersystems, that is, this also needs to be known. What is called a supersystem? What elements are included? With beautiful words, but what lies behind them? Understanding, no. That is, it is necessary to endow with a clear measure. And, of course, the processes occurring in supersystems, that is, this also needs to be known. Known. What is called a supersystem? What elements are included? What is called a supersystem? What elements are included? How management is carried out? Structural, unstructured management. All these things need to be mastered. And then it will become clear that there are no special wonders with these egregores. Nothing special at all. Everything will fall into place. We will now systematically sort this out. So, we have examined the origin of the word, and further, we already know there is the universe. All processes in the universe have a vibrational nature. And a person, a fragment of the universe, also emits vibrations. These vibrations emitted by a person are called the biofield. And this biofield of a person, since it is vibrations, means that these vibrational processes are endowed with some measure. That is, remember, we talked about the carrier frequency. It determines the power of the vibrations, how it radiates from it. And there is modulation. Modulation is the rules, algorithms for processing incoming information, the functioning of the human brain, how it thinks, its way of thinking. And this is key. A person emits a biofield vibrations. Vibrations emit a biofield. In the universe, this is also the process of the trinity of matter, information, and measure. In a person, it is also the trinity of matter, information, and measure. With the biofield, a person perceives everything and all at once. And a person has a sense of measure. That is, we were taught about vision, hearing, smell, and touch. That is, these things are perceived by a certain spectrum of frequencies. Well, the eyes perceive the visible spectrum of frequencies. The ears perceive sound. We do not hear light, but we perceive it with our eyes. And the sound spectrum of frequencies is perceived by our eardrums. And all of this goes to the brain. And a person has a sense of measure. And this sense of measure is just like all the other senses that a person has. And it is through the sense of measure that a person perceives all these oscillatory processes. If you can imagine it that way, probably many have experienced this. My own case in particular was like this. You sit on a stump in the forest gathering mushrooms and suddenly you feel a chill. What is it? It seems like there's nothing visible, no sounds at all. You look around and there's a viper crawling behind you. What is this? I didn't see it right. Or for example, such things that seem like miracles. When a mother sees her son off to the army. Let's say the mother lives in the Moscow region while her son serves in the Pacific Fleet. Mom is preparing lunch for Petya, and suddenly she feels, oh, something has happened to my Petya. It means he's feeling unwell there. Then, when they start to investigate, and you've surely heard of such cases in life, it turns out that yes, at that very moment, something unfortunate happened to the son. What is this? This is what is called mysterious phenomena in various occult sciences. In reality, there is nothing mysterious. That is, the mother tuned in. She is worried about her son. She tuned into a certain wave of vibrations. And since they're material carriers, the mother and son are the same if she worries about her son's problems. And the son also emits vibrations. And when some misfortune or trouble happens to him, what does a person scream? Oh, Mom! Mentally or somehow. And all of this has an effect. The fact that these vibrations are small and not recorded by instruments does not mean they do not exist. They exist, these vibrations. Just because they are not there, they exist. These vibrations, and no, they exist. This is the same mechanism that we have already discussed. Any process of information transmission, this information, spreads throughout the universe. Oscillatory processes occur. This is what we will talk about. And what is an egregor? Now we will delve further into this. Let's start by comparing human perception and the perception of technology through oscillatory processes. The soul of a person in the universe is the substance of their biomass and the natural, that is, physical, so-called fields. The emission of bioplasma fields occurs during the life activities of a person. And we know that indeed a corpse emits differently than a living person. We do not know all the multitude of natural fields, only what is known to science. And here, this picture is divided into two parts. On one side, the instrument part is drawn, and here I showed what I know. This is the means of technogenic technological perception of the world. For example, there is an antenna. Well, outer space is studied and satellites are tracked there. The antenna receives some signal that comes to it, goes to the device, and the needle deflects. There are various types of sensors that detect and perceive certain processes. The satellite has pressure, temperature, voltage sensors, and battery sensors. Something else too, human pressure if flying. Then it's data. Data, human pressure if flying. The signal from it is amplified. Various transformations occur. Particularly, it is converted into digital form. The signal is processed on the onboard computing machine. Then it is converted again, amplified there, and so on, and goes to the recorder. And so this scientist Starling sits and looks, here it is, meaning it is output to the perforated tape or somewhere to the alphabet, to the digital printing device or to the computer. What has come? This signal. This is how the technosensor perception of oscillatory processes occurring in the surrounding world takes place. And the sensitivity of a person, the resolving power, recognition, the recognition ability of the human body, that is, the biogenic perception of the world, is much higher than the means we described. Why? Because the organism as a whole and its entire elemental base, cells, have a finer structure, a more complex organization than the technosensor base of science. That is, unlike instruments, the hierarchical structures of a living person are complete and continuous. And in a person, generally speaking, there is everything, starting from the physical vacuum in which physical fields propagate through atoms, chemical compounds, specialized cells forming the tissues of the human body and organ systems, to the person as a whole personally and society as a whole. That is what is listed here. It turns out that all types of matter and aggregate states of substances are present in a person. And here, if we draw this parallel, again, many natural fields, frequency ranges, the direction of these fields, the polarization of fields, and coding systems that objectively exist in the universe are essentially closed to technosensor perception. For what reason? There are many reasons. Due to the incompleteness of the hierarchical structures of these technical means, low sensitivity of sensors, low resolution, and low recognition capability, that is, the roughness of technical means of information transformation, which distort and lose it when transitioning from one material carrier to another, this is what technology does. Well, for example, as an example, one can mention why, in particular, science has not yet recognized the existence of bioplasma, because only now is the so-called Kirlian effect being discovered. These are the Kirlian couple, who discovered the glow of the hand based on indirect data. That is, the human bioplasma was discovered relatively recently, and now that is not directly, but through the influence of the bioplasma on, thank you, ions that exist in the air. This is in the air. The existence of the bioplasma was determined by their glow. That is, it was not measured directly, but by the result of the influence of this bioplasma on the ions in the air that are present. These photographs were obtained, but what did I illustrate this with? Why has it taken so long? And the technical instrument science is much weaker. But the scientific world considers it completely differently. It turns out that our entire culture does not teach children to consciously and purposefully manage their sensitivity, resolution, and recognition abilities, does not teach them to distinguish between different cultures of perception and thinking, to cultivate a certain culture of thinking and the discipline of internal and external behavior. And some teach this. If we draw a thread back to what we talked about regarding ancient Egyptian priesthood and shamans, remember when we began to consider the global historical process, when children were taught certain skills acquired throughout history. And in general, nothing is given to the herd, to this cattle. Some possess such abilities. Moreover, they can be cultivated. So, in our society, technology prevails over all this, instead of mastering. What is given to you by genetics, given from above by God, it forms such biorobots. A bottle, a beer mug, cigarettes in the teeth, and watching. Look at this technology, how smart it is, artificial intelligence, instead of cultivating in oneself all that I mentioned. In connection with what has been said, many processes of energy information exchange between each person and the universe objectively occur outside of people's direct awareness, including outside of technological perception of the world. That is, these processes exist in the universe, but technology cannot distinguish them, and a person generally believes that they do not exist and cannot exist. But the fact that something cannot be perceived, and the fact that something indeed truly, in an objective manner, does not exist, are two different things. That is, it does not mean that if we cannot perceive something, then it does not actually exist. This is what it is about. So what conclusions can be drawn from this? Here they are listed. This relates to the studies of psychic nerve activity. If the technique is coarser and more primitive than a person and society, then the best instrument for understanding a person is the person and society themselves. That is, remember, the great one said, man is the measure of all things. As for the research, they are interesting in various ways, mainly and significantly as a zombifier of humanity. Their research, due to its incompleteness and coarseness, is expected to lead humanity to destruction through the biorobotization of all humanity. That is, these Satanists, using certain skills they possess, leading society to destruction as a super system as a whole. In order for it to function sustainably, each element of the super system must have the opportunity to realize its genetically determined potential. And then the super system as a whole will realize its developmental potential, which is provided by hierarchically superior volumetric management. And these zombifiers deprive all of this, thereby carrying out generally speaking, the destruction of humanity. Egregore, definition. Here is again a picture that we will often need to have in front of our eyes. So, here is a drawn person. A person emits a biofield, these arrows, and with the biofield, a person also perceives the surrounding world. Living people, like all of nature, give common natural fields. This means that energy and information are predetermined by the existence of everyone and everything in the world, in the universal world. The totality of fields of biospheric organic origin is commonly referred to as the biofield. Well, let's say a person emits vibrations, and these vibrations are commonly referred to as the biofield. A person feels and perceives the world not only through the organs made of the substance of their biomass, but also through common natural fields, that is, through their biofield, inherent to their organism. In other words, they perceive information with their biofield. Furthermore, such reasoning suggests that if a certain group of people has similar parameters in terms of energy, a list of fields, frequencies of these fields, polarization, and so on, then the biofield emissions of people sharing the same information generate an energy information system on field carriers, which is called an egregore in occult sciences. In other words, to put it even simpler and more roughly, I emit vibrations, you emit vibrations, you emit vibrations, and if our vibrations match in many parameters, then these vibrations resonate with each other, forming this biofield structure on field carriers. And any vibrations carry information endowed with a certain measure. And what is the substance here? Matter. And the field is, remember, matter. It appears in the form of 5 aggregate states: solid, liquid, gaseous, plasma, physical, vacuum, and is there static, dynamic fields, and particles. Here you have a material carrier, that is, the material carrier of information. Present in the biofield is a vibrational process. That is, this biofield itself exists in matter. Here you have the unity of matter, information, and the world. Well, in order to make it easier to present the material further, here is a schematic representation. Here, you see, is the Earth. On Earth, there are many, many, many people. This means they each emit their own biofield. And if their characteristics coincide, then a conditional schematic representation of the egregore can be depicted like this. Here, they form a common biofield, which is in essence called the egregore. And when you probably encountered or heard about such things, like a channel was connected, a channel was opened for him. This channel is the connection to the biofields. People emit vibrations. The biofield and the community of their biofields, based on similar characteristics, form this very egregore. Classifications of egregores. We will conduct this in the most general form, and we will also distinguish them further. Egregores differ from each other based on the information contained within them. One egregore has one type of information, another egregore has a different substantive aspect of information, and so on. That is, they differ in information. Egregores can also differ based on the characteristics of people's energy. Some groups of people stand with a powerful egregore, while others have a skewed one, and these have a small power. They can differ based on energy potential characteristics. Here, the potential is directed this way, and there it is directed that way. Different egregores can also be distinguished by the organization of their management. For example, one egregore, here this person throws some information in, and everyone consumes it. That is, he controls all the people, managing them through the injection of information. How this is done we will look at later, but it can be done this way. Here is the same scheme. But the management of the egregore is left to this person, who exerts their controlling influence on this one, and that one then implements the intentions of this person in managing people. There is management from the side of hierarchy, one egregore, and the people entering, forming this egregore. And from a higher level, another egregore, exerts a controlling influence on this egregore, where the level of understanding, the algorithm within it, is much more powerful than this one. People are indeed very close in terms of their energy parameters to each other. And despite the peculiarities of all these energy parameters of people, determined by their genetics, physiology, general emotional structure, that is the type of human psyche, and mood at a certain moment in time, people are still close to each other. Therefore, the informational characteristics of people are more significant in the formation of human egregores. And the community of people, rather than energetic compatibility, which is initially ensured by belonging to a nation, a certain race, and humanity as a whole. After all, in terms of our material carrier, look, we are all the same. That is, what are we made of? From what we eat and drink, right? And we eat and drink approximately the same things too. We eat water, potatoes, cereals. The difference is small. But the informational, substantive side of our behavior is different and is determined precisely by the measure. But more on that later. Furthermore, when talking about the classification of egregores, human egregores fall into biospheric ones, which in turn fall into global ones, and so on, up to the egregore of the universe. Here, conditionally, let's say, there is the egregore of people, let's assume, of Siberians. We are now into human, which means this group of people, Siberians, has their own egregore, quite substantial. This is the Ural egregore, and this is the Moscow egregore, and there are others. All these human egregores fall into the biospheric egregore. And the biospheric egregores, they fall into the egregore of planet Earth. That is, one egregore is in Australia, another egregore is in Antarctica. And somewhere else, this is the egregore of planet Earth. This egregore falls into the egregore of the galaxy, and so on, all the way to the egregore of the universe. Egregores can be mutually nested. Remember, we studied mutually nested supersystems, where one enters into another. This is also the case. That is, when one egregore is kind of placed within another, and this one within that one, they can complement each other with some part. That is, this green egregore complements this red one with its part, as indicated in the diagram. And the red one complements the green egregore with some of its part. This will primarily be determined by the measure, and we will talk about it later. Egregores can be neutrally cooperative. That is, when egregores come into contact with each other, nothing happens. They can be slightly mutually antagonistic. That is, there is a rejection between them. What is illustrated by this drawing, you have all probably found yourselves in such a situation as well. There is some party going on, everyone is having fun, everything is good for everyone. Each is radiating their own biofield. There is dancing, and conversations are happening. Depending on age, whether good or bad, that's another question. And the egregore is present at this party. Suddenly, ding ding, a call. A new person arrives somewhere and they haven't opened their mouth yet. They haven't said anything at all, haven't looked at anyone. But the situation has changed. What is this? This is the influence, that is, a bearer of different information has arrived. That is, people unconsciously feel this. It is expressed in their behavior all at once. That is, the egregores are mutually antagonistic. And in the limit, generally speaking, they are defined by the very concepts at the very limit. That is, one concept, another concept. That is, they are unacceptable. And at the level of biofields, this is felt. The same opposition exists between various egregores of different religious cult rituals, and so on. That is, church rituals. Well, it refers to, in particular, pseudo-Christianity and the Koronicheski egregores, Catholics and Orthodox. They have also been divided. If we talk about the principle of divide and conquer, then Christians are also heterogeneous, as, however, in the Quran, there are Shiites and Sunnis. That is, Islamists can also be different. Wahhabis, we talked about them. There are also others. Mutual dislike. What causes it? We will examine a little further. Egregore is the trinity of matter, information, and the world. What does this mean? Since we say that all processes are oscillatory in nature and represent the process of the trinity of matter, information, and the world, let's look at the egregore from the perspective of this trinity. So, in terms of energy, it is literally in material terms. Why? Because we said that energy is a transitional form of existence of matter. Remember when we studied the goddess Nut? This is matter, oil is energy, pasture is space, and the god Sebek is the god of time. This is the false representation of the universe that the ancient Egyptian priesthood realized through the four-in-one deity Amun, Amun. And in reality, energy, when it appears, for example, when a log burns, that is, it transitions from a solid state to a gaseous state. At the same time, we see that energy is released. That is, this is a transitional form of existence of matter. Therefore, in energetic, that is, material terms, people generate an egregore just like power plants and other electrical consumers connected to the grid. And here is a little picture drawn. Look, there is a thermal power station, hydraulic power station, and various types of nuclear power plants, such as different models.